Today we are going to talk about one of the most important subjects in the Bible, righteousness. The word righteousness comes from a Greek word which is translated as innocent. There's another word related to that word that is the Greek word that means to be right, to be correct. So let's just start in the 3rd chapter of Romans. We're going to start in the 10th verse. And what it says there is, "As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. There is none that understands, there is none that seeks after God. They are all gone out of the way, they are together become unprofitable. There is none that does good, no, not one. Their throat is an open sepulchre, with their tongues they have used deceit. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their way, and the way of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes." So there has been certain people that like to say that this is a description of everyone, that there is none righteous, no, not one. And while that's absolutely true in the context of our flesh, but as we have seen over the past several weeks, that there is a path to righteousness. And so we have to understand this scripture is not talking about a person who has accepted the sacrifice of Jesus and been made righteous. This is talking about who we were before that happened. So it's related kind of to the discussion that people say, well, you can't follow your heart because your heart is desperately wicked, or however that verse goes. Yeah, that's true when you're not saved. Your heart is. But once you have surrendered that to God and you have become His child by faith, as we've learned, that's a completely different story. So I say all that just to, let's remember this is talking about who we used to be. We used to be filthy, disgusting, unrighteous people who had no desire for godliness. But, see, it's also important to understand that that's where we start. Everybody starts there. And now we turn over to the book of Isaiah, the 64th chapter and the 6th verse. This verse is really important to us from a lot of different perspectives, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. "We are all as an unclean thing, and all our righteousness is a filthy rag. And we all do fade as a leaf, and our iniquities like the wind have taken us away." So what Paul was talking about there in the book of Romans, he's referring to Isaiah, and this is what he's referring to, that our righteousness, our being right with God, is nothing to be proud of. We don't have anything to bring to God to say, this makes me righteous. This is super important in understanding as a unsaved person, an unrighteous person. This is super important because this is the floor. This is the base of where a person has to be in order to come into a relationship with God. It's kind of like that old Chinese proverb about the student and the master in Kung Fu. The student was saying to the master, "Well, I know this, and I know this, and I know that." And the master poured tea into his cup, and he just kept pouring and pouring until it overflowed. And the student said, "What is the lesson to this?" And the master said, "First you must empty your cup for me to be able to fill it." In a similar way, this is how we come to Jesus, in that we have to recognize our weakness and throw out all of our accomplishments and our goodness and our "I'm better than that guy" before we can come into this place of accepting our righteousness before God. Let's go back to the book of Romans chapter 3 and verse 19. Paul says, "Now we know that what things soever the law says, it says to those who are under the law, so that every mouth can be stopped and all of the world may come guilty before God. Therefore, by the deeds of the law, there will no flesh be justified in his sight, for by the law is the knowledge of sin. But now, the righteousness of God without the law is manifested, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of God, which is by faith of Jesus Christ unto all and upon all them that believe, for there is no difference, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God." This is saying something, of course, super important. He says in verse 20, he says, you cannot get there by following the law. And then he says, everyone is qualified for righteousness because everyone comes from this position of not being qualified for righteousness. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. This is how we are before God comes into our life. We have no righteousness to stand on. We can't come to God and say, well, I did this or I did that. I can't say, well, I gave millions of dollars to the poor and so that makes me righteous. And God says, no, that's filthy rags. That doesn't get you anywhere in heaven, because we are all coming short. When it said that our righteousness is filthy rags, you understand that word filthy rags is talking about the cloth that a woman used during her menstrual cycle to clean up the blood. So basically, we have Paul and the scriptures, Isaiah, are saying that when we bring our righteousness to God and we give it to Him, as far as He's concerned, He's looking at a bloody tampon. That's disgusting. But that's who we are when we come in our own qualifications and our own righteousness. And the scriptures make it crystal clear that you cannot get there on your own effort, and it has to be this place of recognizing your need for God. And then when you do that, then He comes in and makes you qualified, and He says, come on in. There is a mentality that we could never come into the presence of God because God is so much better than we are. That's exactly true. But then once He makes you righteous, that goes away. And all of a sudden, as in another verse it says, we can come boldly to the throne of grace for help in a time of need. Well, yeah, you come boldly because He gave you the right to come boldly. And He says you are righteous even though you didn't do anything to deserve it. And even though you are worthless in yourself, I have made you righteous. This is the tension, the conflict, the area for Christians that you have to wrestle with all your life, which is, in myself, I am not qualified. But God has made me qualified. So, even though I have no rights, I have every right. And that's that place in the middle where, as long as we remember that our rights come from God and not from our accomplishment, we're good. We can exist in the presence of God as children of God with no qualification other then that He has granted this to us because of our surrender to Him. And then, of course, we'll get into all that eventually, but as you know, faith without works is dead. And so once you come into God's righteousness and you become righteous, then what happens is that He empowers you to do those works. And this is the very essential thing that many religions and churches get wrong. You don't do works to be righteous. You are righteous, and so you do works. That's the difference. All right. I will come back tomorrow. We'll talk some more about righteousness. Have a good day. Bye-bye. What goes up must come down.